Panama is forcing authorities to substantially scale back shipping through the Panama Canal.
Panama and the vital canal linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. The new president has repeatedly said that the U.S. should take back control of the waterway.
Imagine a giant shortcut through the land that allows ships to pass between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans without having to take the long way around. That's the Panama Canal. It's a man-made waterway in Panama, stretching 40 miles from coast to coast. Ships can pass through it in either direction, and the whole trip takes about 10 hours. Pretty cool, right? It's owned and administered by Panama, and they play fair. Every ship, no matter where it's from, gets the same treatment and pays the same fee. Before this canal existed, ships had to take a crazy detour around Cape Horn, the tip of South America. This added 8,000 nautical miles to the trip. Think of it like an extra long road trip, and took about 2 months. Now, thanks to the canal, trips between the two oceans have gotten much shorter and faster. But wait, there's a twist. A shiny new rival is stepping onto the scene, and it may outdo the Panama Canal. Stay tuned as Elon Musk unveils Mexico's incredible $4.5 billion game-changer. You won't believe what's coming next. Subscribe to the channel before we get into the details. Let's take a fun trip back in time to uncover the story of the Panama Canal. Way back in 1513, a Spanish explorer named Vasco Núñez de Balboa trekked across the skinny strip of Panama and thought, this could be a great shortcut for ships. Soon, European bigwigs caught on, dreaming of a water path to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through this narrow bridge between North and South America. By 1534, Emperor Charles V even ordered a survey to find a perfect spot for this idea, hoping to make ship trips between Spain and Peru a breeze. Fast forward to 1668, and an English thinker, Sir Thomas Browne, pointed at Panama and said, "This is the spot for a canal." But the first real try came from Scotland with the Darien scheme. A total flop because the jungle was way too tough. Then, in 1811, a German scientist named Alexander von Humboldt wrote a big essay about Central America's geography. He scoped out 5 possible canal routes, including Panama, but decided Nicaragua, with its huge lake, was the best bet. The British liked his idea and tried building there in 1843, but that didn't work out either. Still, it led to a deal between the UK and the US to share control of any future canal in the region. In 1846, the US made a pact with New Granada, now Colombia, for transit rights across Panama, even getting permission to step in with military muscle if needed. Then, in 1848, gold was found in California. Bam! Suddenly, everyone wanted a quick way across Panama to get from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Smart American businessman William Henry Aspinwall jumped on it, setting up steamships from New York to Panama, then Panama to California, with a land crossing in between. Other big names, like Cornelius Vanderbilt, followed suit, turning Panama into a bustling shortcut. Between 1850 and 1855, a group led by William Henry Aspinwall built a railroad, now called the Panama Canal Railway, stretching from Colon on the Caribbean side to Panama City. This wasn't cheap. It cost $8 million, 6 times more than they planned. And it was tough, with 6,000 to 12,000 workers losing their lives to nasty tropical diseases. But once it was done, that railroad started raking in serious cash for its owners. In 1870, U.S. President Grant set up a special team, the Interoceanic Canal Commission, to figure out the best spot for a canal. They sent naval officers, like Commander Thomas Oliver Selfridge, Jr., to check out the routes suggested by Humboldt years earlier. After some debate, they gave a big thumbs up to Nicaragua, making it the top choice for American leaders. By the 1930s, the Panama Canal was facing a water shortage. So, they built the Madden Dam across the Chagres River above Gatun Lake. Finished in 1935, it created Madden Lake, later called Lake Alajuela, giving the canal extra water to keep things flowing. In 1939, they started a huge upgrade. New, bigger locks to handle the giant warships the U.S. was building. They dug a ton of dirt for new channels, but after World War II, the whole project got scrapped. After the war, things got spicy between the U.S. and Panama. The U.S. controlled the canal and the surrounding canal zone, but many Panamanians felt it should be theirs. Tensions boiled over with student protests, met by fences and more U.S. troops. The 1956 Suez Crisis, where the U.S. pushed France and the U.K. to back off Egypt's Suez Canal, fired up Panama even more. They wanted their canal back too. Things exploded on January 9, 1964, Martyrs' Day, when riots broke out, leaving about 20 Panamanians and 3 to 5 U.S. soldiers dead. Fast forward to 1974, and talks finally started to sort things out. On September 7, 1977, the Torrijos-Carter Treaties were signed by U.S. President Jimmy Carter and Panama's leader, Omar Torrijos, setting the stage for Panama to take over. The Torrijos-Carter Treaties kicked off a big change. Panama would get full control of the canal as long as they promised to keep it neutral forever. That handover happened right at noon on December 31, 1999, when the Panama Canal Authority took the reins. Today, the canal is a major moneymaker for Panama. Think of it like their golden goose. Before the switch, Panama held a global contest to find someone to run the shipping ports at the canal's Atlantic and Pacific ends for 25 years. This wasn't tied to the canal itself, and a Hong Kong company called Hutchison Whampoa, owned by billionaire Li Ka-shing, won the deal. Fast forward to December 21, 2020, and U.S. President-elect Donald Trump stirred the pot. He claimed Panama was overcharging American ships and breaking the Torrijos-Carter Treaties, saying the U.S. should take the canal back. The next day, he hinted it was falling into the wrong hands, pointing at China. Panama's president, José Raúl Mulino, fired back, saying the charges were fair and Panama was the only one running the show. He called the canal a precious part of Panama's heritage. On December 24, 2024, folks in Panama City protested outside the U.S. Embassy, calling Trump a public enemy over his threats. That same day, a group of 10 Central and South American countries, the Bolivarian Alliance, backed Panama, slamming Trump's comments and cheering for Panama's independence. On January 7, 2025, Trump doubled down in a press conference, vowing to grab the canal back, even hinting at using money or military muscle to do it, all in the name of U.S. economic security. He brought it up again in his inaugural speech on January 20th, but the canals had its share of drama before. Back in 1977, some opponents of the treaties worried that once the U.S. left, the canal would fall apart, less efficient, poorly maintained. Did those fears come true? Well, the canal's still a big deal, but it's definitely had its ups and downs. People worried that when Panama took over in 1999, the canal would lose its groove. But guess what? That didn't happen. By 2004, reports showed the canal was running smoothly, building on what the Americans started and even getting better under Panama's watch. One big way to measure how well the canal works is canal waters time, how long it takes a ship to get through, including waiting. In the 2000s, it clocked in between 20 and 30 hours, according to the Panama Canal Authority, ACP. Not too shabby. Accidents? They've stayed pretty steady too, between 10 and 30 a year out of about 14,000 trips. And that's only counting the ones serious enough for an official investigation. More ships are using the canal now, especially with imports from Asia heading to the U.S. East Coast instead of the West Coast. The number of big ocean trips jumped from 11,725 in 2003 to 13,233 in 2007, then dipped to 12,855 in 2007-2009. The canal's year runs October to September. Ships are getting bigger too, with more Panamax giants, maxed-out canal-sized vessels, passing through. That pushed the total weight carried from 227.9 million tons in 1999 to a record 312.9 million in 2007, before settling at 299.1 million in 2007-2009. Some folks got nervous about the dips, but things leveled out. In the first 10 years after taking over, Panama poured nearly $1 billion into upgrading the canal, aiming to boost its capacity by 20%. They widened and straightened the tricky Culebra Cut so ships could pass easier, deepened Gatun Lake's channel for bigger boats and better water flow, and dug deeper at the Atlantic and Pacific entrances. They also brought in cool new gear, like a drill barge, a suction dredger, and a 20% bigger tugboat fleet, plus upgraded the canal's machinery with fancier tug locomotives. Panama didn't just keep the canal running, they upgraded it a lot. They replaced more than 16 kilometers of locomotive track and added new controls for the lock machinery. Plus, they improved the traffic system so ships could pass more easily than ever before. But in December 2010, nature took a turn when record-breaking rains closed the canal for 17 hours, the first closure since the U.S. invasion of Panama in 1989. The rain also ruined one of the approaches to the Centenario Bridge. Here's how the canal uses water. Lake Gaitan, filled with rainwater, stores extra water in the wet months to run the old locks. Every time a ship goes into one of the locks, 101,000 cubic meters of water is released into the ocean. This is no change for the size of the ship. In the dry season, when rainfall wanes, Lake Gatan can lose water, causing headaches. Panama is also serious about keeping green. Since 2000, as part of the UN Global Compact and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the ACP embarked on an eco-friendly expansion plan. The new locks come with 3 water-saving basins that reduce water loss by reusing 60% of the water. Very smart. Fun fact: the sea level of the Pacific is about 20 centimeters higher than the Atlantic, thanks to water density and weather quirks. But periods of drought are dampening the excitement. The 2015 to 2016 fiscal year was one of the driest ever, and 2019 was ranked as the 5th driest in 70 years. Rising temperatures are also causing more water to evaporate. In normal times, 36 ships pass through the canal each day. But in early December 2020, 3 ships were backing away, as only 22 ships could transit per day. By January 2024, the canal was in a pinch. Low water levels meant only 24 ships could pass through each day. Droughts were making life tough, jacking up prices and leaving ships stuck waiting. That's when a 100-year-old idea got a reboot, thanks to Mexico and Elon Musk. Say hello to Mexico's Interoceanic Corridor Railway, a $7.5 billion 188-mile train line across the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. It's designed to take the pressure off the struggling Panama Canal by moving cargo from ships to trains. then zipping it across to the other coast for reloading onto ships. Think of it like a super speedy backup plan for global trade. This isn't totally new. The railway first opened in 1907 but got sidelined once the Panama Canal took over. Now it's back with a modern glow-up. Mexico's pumping $6 billion into this, with another $2 billion from private investors. The railway stretches through Veracruz and Oaxaca, two states hit hard by poverty, hoping to spark jobs, investment, and better roads and bridges. It'll have 10 stops, plus ports on both the Atlantic and Pacific sides. There's even talk of linking it to the Tren Maya, stretching all the way to Cancun for an extra boost. For over 100 years, the Panama Canal has been the MVP of shortcuts, shaving thousands of miles off shipping routes between east and west. But lately, droughts have drained Gatun Lake, the canal's water powerhouse, leaving ships waiting up to 2 weeks or shelling out big bucks to skip the line. Mexico's railway steps in as a game changer, offering a way to dodge the delays and rising costs. Mexico's interoceanic corridor railway is stepping up, but there's a catch. It might not be a speed demon. Moving cargo from ships to trains and back again takes time, and trains can't haul as much as those massive shipping vessels. So, it might not carry as much stuff as the Panama Canal does. The Panama Canal Authority isn't sweating it, though. They fired back, saying, "We're still the champs. Our canal connects over 180 sea routes, 170 countries, and 1,970 ports. Boom! We're keeping an eye on this railway, but we're betting on our service and pumping money into making it even better." Even so, the railway could take about 5% of the canal's cargo off its hands, easing the strain from those pesky droughts. The idea of linking the Atlantic and Pacific through Mexico's Isthmus of Tehuantepec isn't new. It's been around since the 1500s. Back when Mexico was a Spanish colony called New Spain, conquistador Hernán Cortés wrote to Emperor Charles XIII about connecting the oceans. He didn't pinpoint the isthmus, but its short distance between coasts made it a hot idea. For centuries, big players like Spain, Britain, France, the Netherlands, and later the US drooled over this spot. Why? Before the Panama Canal, ships had to brave the long, dangerous Cape Horn route around South America, losing time, cargo, and even lives. A shortcut here would have been a game changer. In 1811, scientist Alexander von Humboldt gave it a shout-out in his essay, saying the Isthmus of Tehuantepec was perfect for a canal, with ports like Veracruz so close to the action. Plans for canals or roads popped up over time, but none stuck, until now, with this railway revival. The Panama Canal's still king, but Mexico's making waves. Way back in 1811, scientist Alexander von Humboldt wrote about a sweet spot in New Spain, now Mexico, where the oceans could meet. The Isthmus of Tehuantepec. It's the narrowest gap between the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific, with rivers like the Coatzacoalcos and Tonalá super close to each other. Humboldt wasn't just eyeing Mexico, though. He also mentioned the Isthmus of Panama, part of New Granada back then. He noted that Vasco Núñez de Balboa crossed it in 1513, way before Mexico was even on Spain's map. But by Humboldt's time, no one had properly scoped out Panama or pinned down its exact spot, even though canal ideas had been floating around since 1528. Humboldt had more to say about Tehuantepec. He pointed out that Viceroy Vicente de Güemes, the second Count of Revillagigedo, was obsessed with building a canal there. Plus, by the late 1700s, land roads were already linking the two coasts, carrying treasures like Guatemala's famous indigo, a super valuable dye from Central America, then under New Spain's umbrella. Humboldt also mentioned cargo from Guayaquil, now in Ecuador, traveling through Acapulco to Veracruz, skipping the treacherous Cape Horn route. He raved about Oaxaca's beauty and riches, predicting its port would one day be a big deal, especially with more ships hauling Guatemala's indigo via the Coatzacoalcos River. In 1774, Spanish officials poked around the isthmus, and by 1814, they greenlit a canal, but it never happened under their watch. Mexico broke free in 1821, and soon after, survey teams scoped out the area, dreaming up a railroad instead. Money troubles killed that plan back then. Fast forward to now. With the Panama Canal drying up from drought, plus chaos in the Red Sea and other shipping lanes, Mexico's seeing dollar signs. Their $2.8 billion interoceanic corridor across Tehuantepec is ready to shine, offering a fresh path for global trade. Mexico's turning a skinny stretch of land in the south, the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, into a 188-mile railway superhighway. This spots the shortest hop between the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific in the country, and they're betting it could move up to 1.4 million shipping containers, those 20-foot boxes, every year by 2033. If it works, this dry corridor could turn the isthmus into a buzzing trade hotspot. Mexican officials are pumped, calling it a fresh alternative to giants like the Panama and Suez canals. Oliver Cutler, a trade expert from the Mexican embassy in Germany, posted on LinkedIn that Mexico's perfect location could make it a logistics superstar, not just for North America, but the whole world. He says the key is high-tech magic at the ports of Coatzacoalcos and Salina Cruz, plus super smart railways. Think of it like giving the trains and docks a turbo boost to shuffle millions of containers without a hitch. Cutler says it'll take teamwork between the government and businesses to pull it off. But not everyone's sold. Global shipping pros are scratching their heads, wondering if it can really take on the Panama Canal, which handles 14,000 ships and 8 million containers a year. Pawan Joshi from E2Open, a supply chain tech company in Austin, Texas, told FreightWaves there's a catch. The Panama Canal's a quick 50-mile jaunt, while this railway's a 200-mile trek. Plus, trains can't carry as much as ships, and the ports need serious muscle. Can they unload fast enough? Do they even have the right gear? E2Open knows the game. They connect over 480,000 supply chain partners and track 15 billion transactions a year. Joshi, a big thinker at E2Open, says Mexico's interoceanic corridor railway could be a lifesaver when stuff like droughts or global hiccups mess up shipping. Like what's hitting the Panama Canal now? Even if it's not a total replacement, it's a handy backup plan, and companies are starting to notice. He even spilled that the Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern Railroad is eyeing some cash to spruce up things on the Panama side, building more options for shippers. But for Mexico's railway to really team up with the Panama Canal, Joshi says it's not just about Mexico going solo. It'll take a big group effort. Mexico, the US, and other countries need to chip in with tech, roads, and smart planning. He's talking teamwork between the Panama Canal crew, Mexican rail bosses, and even the ports where ships start and end, plus the ocean shipping companies. Countries like China and the US have to keep trade flowing smoothly so everyone makes money. Joshi's big idea? More buddying up between shippers and ports worldwide could make shipping lanes way better. Imagine this: if 10%, 15%, or even 20% of the cargo heading to Houston via the Panama Canal could switch gears, dock in Long Beach, hop on a train, and roll overland. It could shake things up. The Port of Houston might start buzzing in a whole new way. But it's all about coordination, getting everyone from shippers to port managers to rail folks on the same page. The Panama Canal is like the VIP highway for global trade, but lately it's hit a snag. A crazy drought smack in the middle of what should be Panama's rainy season has dried up the reservoirs that keep the canal's locks running. Normally, it's a smooth ride, but now? Picture this. Over 200 ships stuck in a massive traffic jam, just floating around, waiting their turn. Some are packed with furniture, gadgets, or building stuff, others with oil, gas, or grain, all itching to squeeze through this famous bottleneck. This isn't just a little hiccup. With water levels low, canal bosses have had to limit how many ships, and how big, can pass through each day. In our fast-moving world, where markets want everything now, that's a problem. About $270 billion worth of cargo zips through the canal yearly, heading to over 170 countries. Some ships are already saying, "Forget this," and taking the long way around to dodge the wait. It's nuts and worrying, says Michelle Wheezy Bachman, a shipping pro from Lloyd's List Intelligence. She warns freight costs could spike, especially for fuels like liquefied natural gas, which might hit shoppers' wallets. When things get messy like this, old ideas start popping back up. What if there's another way to sail from the Pacific to the Atlantic? Rewind to the early 1900s. The U.S. had a choice: dig a canal through Nicaragua or Panama. Panama won the vote. Why? It was shorter, and unlike Nicaragua, it didn't have a bunch of grumpy volcanoes ready to erupt. Easy pick, right? But here's the twist. The Nicaragua canal dream never really died. With Panama stuck in a drought jam, people are wondering, could this be its big comeback moment? Stay tuned. A decade ago, a Chinese businessman hyped up a mega plan to build a canal in Nicaragua, but it flopped. Now, with a nasty drought clogging the Panama Canal and climate change threatening more water woes, people are wondering, could Nicaragua, or another nearby spot, step up? Expert Jean-Paul Rodrigue from Hofstra University says it's doable but tricky. Nicaragua's route would need two canals, one 15 miles, the other 60, linked by Lake Nicaragua, way longer than Panama's 50-mile shortcut. What do you think of this Panama Canal rival? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more cool stuff.